I saw the film Fahrenheit 9/11 by Michael Moore. It is the most successful documentary of all time. And I saw the credits of that, and I saw a guy called an archive producer. I was like, I want to be that.
Our speaker today, James, is a multiple award-winning producer and archive producer with over 23 years experience in the industry. He was head of archive at Princess Productions for many years, where he worked on prestigious entertainment and factual shows such as The Friday Night Project, School of Saatchi, and Jay-Z, He Came, He Saw, He Conquered. Since going freelance, he archive produced on the BAFTA award-winning 7/7 One Day in London, the RTS-winning Graffiti Wars, and Apple Music's first ever commission, 808. He has recently produced Ronnie's, a feature-length doc about the legendary jazz club Ronnie Scott. He's won a Focal Award for Best Use of Archive in a Sports Film for sports doc for his film I Am Duran, and his doc American Murder, The Family Next Door has just been announced as Netflix's most successful feature doc of all time. So welcome, James. What a list of accolades.
Thank you very much, Philip. That's yeah, it sounds crazy when you think about it and you listen to someone else say it, but especially American Murder. You know, that one went slightly viral, and yeah, I'm bowled over at the success of it.
So making a doc like American Murder, what does that actually involve for the archive producer?
Well, that American Murder is, well, what, if I describe it as what, we just kind of called it what in-house, but it is a 100% archive-made film. The only thing which isn't archive is the score and the graphics effects for the social media stuff. That's it. It's all archive. So Jenny, the director, when she approached Netflix and brought me in, she had a vision to make it all archive. There was a budget to go and film stuff because the crime happened in a town in Colorado where only 900 people lived, and it's not as if you can go on Getty Images and search for that town and find GVs. So, but there was an element in the budget to go and film, but she was like, no, we must make it all archive. So there's 3 levels to that. So there's all the police material, which the production company got in through Freedom of Information Act, and they're obliged to send it you because of the American Constitution. It's public domain material, but there was a lot of it, and then there's the elements like all the social media, all the family archive, all the news, etc., etc. But it's the archive producer's job to essentially look at that and organize it. So pre the edit, we had to look at it and watch everything. And it wasn't just me. It's assistant editor, director, editor, and we had a social media researcher as well who helped me with the social media stuff because I'm quite old and I don't quite understand it. But it's about organizing that properly, just as if you were going to shoot a drama and you've got all the raw footage or rushes of your drama. It's got to be organized properly. It's exactly the same process. So we had to organize all that material, and there was thousands of hours of it, hundreds of thousands of still images, of which we had to subsequently put in essentially a date order and time order. So the edit could make their way through it and make a brilliant story according to the director's wishes.
And you said that everything in that is archive. Like, I'm sure when I was watching it, I saw some drone shots and things like that. Is that all archive as well?
Yeah. So some of the drone shots are from the police when they put the drone up near where the oil tanks were. Not to spoil it, but he kills the family. The clue's in the name of the show, but they put the drone up, so we used that. But the drones of the town I just couldn't find anything whatsoever. Eventually on YouTube, I found an estate agent, and so the estate agents, when they sell a property in that kind of area, they plop a drone in the air, And so I just went to them and said, can we use this? Because it kind of covers the town. And they went, yeah, fine. You can use it for free if you give us a credit at the end. So we did. And then stuff like that, there's traveling shots. It looks like you put a camera in the front of a POV, a point of view in the front of a car, and it takes you kind of almost along the route to where he went and did the crime. But that was from a CNN. There were old rushes from CNN, a documentary they made on the same subject. So yeah, it's 100% archive.
Well, that's some dedication to purity to make sure that you get absolutely everything archived. And it's it feels like quite a varied role, archive. It's not just when it comes to, you're not just working on one genre, you're not even necessarily just working on one medium. Do you find that as an archive producer you work across a lot of genres and mediums?
Yeah, Philip. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done this. It's actually, I've nearly done it for 25 years nearly now. So it's a quarter of a century. I wonder where that's gone. But I first started and it was pure TV, and I've done all genres apart from kids and natural history in television. Everything else I've done. And, it ranges from finding a few clips for an entertainment show title, got to dance. I did all the aerial, found and licensed all the aerial stuff for the titles for that, to, right to American Murder, where you find everything's archived. But you can, once you get established in this industry, there's not a lot of really good archive producers out there, because it takes a long time to learn the craft. But now I do dramas, I do adverts, I do corporate videos, I do charity stuff, I do festivals, theatre, you name it, where it involves me going and finding something which they want and then licensing it for their product, whatever it might be. Then essentially I'm in charge of all of that, and I do it. So I've done theatre production on the 60s. When a certain dance number is gone away behind the curtain, they had a screen up, they have a little 5-minute little 60s montage, which I did, whilst they're changing their costumes for the next song and dance number. So it can be anything, really be anything.
When you're given a project like that, where do you go? What do you do first? Do you have a list of people who you can go to? Do you have to go to, where do you get the clips?
Well, whenever people ask me kind of where do you go and get the clips, it really is I think I asked you to ask that question. I can't really explain. You've got to do it for 25 years just to know. But that was an advert, and it was through Guinness was the client, and it was through an ad agency who I can't remember, and then a production company, and then through the director wanted archive producers to help make it. So we had a really good brief, and Dan, the guy, I can't remember his surname, but he had a really good kind of vision of what he wanted to do. I literally, like, for the rugby, you see the cutaway or the tuberculosis ward, or it's not factual. It's an advert. We cheated slightly, because some of them were just normal hospital wards. They weren't tuberculosis wards. The people in the crowd, etc. But that's the beauty about making something really creative. So I just knew that where we needed to go for the budget. The budget wasn't huge to license the material, and so we kind of go, right, we'll go here, we'll go here, and there's some stills, and we obviously need to go to BBC Sport for the rugby, sport right material is very expensive and problematic, but we got there in the end, and it's really effective, I think, and it won an international award for that one.
So it's years of experience of sort of needles in haystacks, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, to become a really good archive producer, you really have to, when I first started in it, so I'll tell you how I started in the industry. is that I moved to London in 1997 after getting a rather poor degree at Sheffield Hallam in media studies. I came down here, and being a Yorkshireman, my father wouldn't pay for my rent. Back in those days, if you wanted to work in telly, you had to work for nothing. My father was like, "You pay for your rent, lad." So I got a job in. I was actually a manager of a court reporting company. Anyway, I got fired from that job because I was rubbish, and then became a researcher at the Image Bank, which is essentially just as Getty Images took it over. So I was on the research end. Then I got me made into an account manager. I got tasked with selling footage to bigger advertising agencies like Saatchi and Saatchi. I was rubbish at that. I got fired from that. And then I was like, no, but I was really good at the research part of it. Why did they make me become an account manager? And so I eventually got a job at Sky News in the news library, 24-hour news, and half of the news, if not more, is library pictures, is archive material. Back when I was doing it, the Blair government was in power. If you had an economic story, you would never have the most recent pictures of Blair coming out of number 10. You'd use library pictures to illustrate that. There's an art in doing that. And, I was there for a long time. And I saw the film Fahrenheit 9/11 by Michael Moore. It is the most successful documentary of all time. And I saw the credits of that. And I saw a guy called an archive producer. I was like, I want to be that. And so it took me a long time, and you really, really cut your teeth on doing lots and lots of stuff and working way up the ladder, and eventually went to Princess Productions, did all this stuff. But you just always have to keep an eye on your subject matter and the industry, and just as if you were a doctor, you would always keep up to date with all the medical journals, all the advances in medicine applicable to your job. You would keep on top of them. So that's what you have to do. Like you have to know kind of roughly where all the libraries are, the commercial libraries, but you have to really keep on top of the industry and keep on top of the rights, etc. It's constantly changing, and the technology, etc. I mean, there's a very, there's a lot of people just think it's finding footage and putting it in something, and that's it. And it's not the case. It's actually a very hard and sometimes thankless job. But with COVID coming in and people realizing that they couldn't film anything, archive just went bananas. I mean, really, honestly, it's completely bananas. I've never experienced anything like it in my 25 years. And, the people I really look up to were like, no, even 40 years ago, nothing's been like this. So people started to rely on archive stuff. And that's when, it's really now become a really valid job. Not that it wasn't before, but it's just kind of hammered it home that actually we're quite important in the process. And we've got many, 1 foot is in research, 1 foot's in editorial, 1 foot's in legal, 1 foot's in post-production, technical, storytelling, delivery. You become a kind of expert. Well, not an expert, but what's the expression? A jack of all trades, a master of none. It's kind of a jack of all trades and a master of a few.
Wow, what a great trailer. Just watching that makes me realize that sort of working with archive is like working with all the best bits. If you go out and shoot something yourself, you'll come back with sort of a load of rushes that aren't that good sometimes, but you get to work with the stuff that is...
Oh, believe me, there's loads of rubbish.
Oh, right.
But, for that project, I mean, that was a dream. I mean, Michael Caine, your producer, I mean, he took us out for dinner loads of times. It's Michael Caine.
Wow.
I just sat there in the restaurant, like giving me pieces of advice, and he's great guy. And for that one, I mean, that's really my first big feature documentary for the cinema. We went to Venice Film Festival, got a standing ovation for 10 minutes. I was on a Riva speedboat with Michael Caine and Simon Fuller. I'm just a aging fat Yorkshire archive producer. I'm there going, what's happened?
Oh, it's glam.
On all the posters but I'm really proud, and for that film, and we had a big lead up for that. Long production time. For Simon Fuller's a genius. He's Mr. Music, and he went, no, this has got to be the best 60. No one can beat it, and I don't think people can ever beat that film if you're going to look at the 60s and specifically this country. I had a lot of money and a lot of time to spend sorting it, and I went down. You wouldn't believe the stuff I had to do to find a lot of that material. All the Twiggy shots in color. There's if you go to the commercial libraries, there's 2 shots of Twiggy in color from the 60s, and I found like 2 hours. But it took me a lot of time and effort. And
are they in like private collections or?
So it was her. That was Justin de Villeneuve, who was her ex boyfriend and manager. And let's just say Justin's very colourful life, and you're not someone you would take on lightly. And it took him to get divorced from his wife, to move out of his house, to eventually find the reels in a crate in the basement. And I was on a beach in Thailand with my wife at the time. And he called me up and I did a lap of the beach. He said, I found the films. And I did a lap of the beach twice, just like, yay. And we got them sent over to my restoration facility, got them done to 2K. And they're amazing. And unfortunately, no one will be able to see them again because Justin doesn't want them to be used. So they're his films.
What are the most what's the most difficult thing about doing your job? If you were to, it sounds actually sounds super interesting. It's almost like being a private investigator, tracking things down that nobody even realizes exists. That's kind of like the best part of it, by the sounds of things to me. What would you say is the worst?
Well, as I said, there's many facets to this job. I think the thing you get really good at this job, the reason why you get really good at this job is the relationships you build with the storytellers. So in any kind of production, you have, especially in a really archive-heavy production, you've got the director, the editor, and the archive producer. Now, the producer finds the money, technically, doesn't have a huge amount to do with the editorial part of it. For me, going and finding stuff is the easy bit. It's managing the edit as it goes along. And there's a real technical element of how you do that. And if you don't, you have to be super, super organized. Honestly, if I pan this camera around, you'd see my bookshelf. They're just a mess. But in the job, you have to be super organized. And if you don't, it will come back and haunt you. So if my mantra is, if it goes in right, it comes out right. So the most difficult thing I find is, I've learned over my 25 years of doing this, is that you have to build up you're the third storyteller. You've got the director, the editor, and then you've got assistant editors and stuff. But essentially, the triangle of the storytelling is that you're giving the material to the editor, and the editor and the director are trying to tell the story. But your voice matters. That's why I'm on the posters for most of the thing I do. I'm at the front end of the credits because, if a film is 100% archive, then technically I'm the DOP. If you look at it that way. So, but the hard part is the rights and the back end of the movie. So you're approaching your online. You get delivered what's called an EDL, which is the mass of the edit. You have to kind of digest that, and that's a skill in itself. But then you realize every single first cut, it's like hugely over budget. And then you've got to go, right, you want the same film, but kind of up to budget, and then that's where the producing aspect comes in. You have to start doing deals with people. There's loads of rights. There's loads of, I mean, when it comes to rights, that you can have choreography rights, your third-party rights, acting rights, script writing. It's not just licensing the footage. There's lots of other stuff you have to take into consideration, and that just comes from, you know, from years of experience. But it's also relying on other people as well. You know, I've always got a lawyer, and you know, productions sometimes go, we don't want to go to the lawyer because they're really expensive. I'm like, well, I can advise you to a certain extent, but I'm not a lawyer. They are, so go to them. And it's like production and, you know, except producers, you're a third part of that team, and you have to become, you're a storyteller, really. I won't do projects where the story's not right. That's the most important thing. If the story's right and you've got the budget and the schedule to do it, then I'll do it, because I really love, and I love challenges, even if it's really hard. I mean, you know, to license the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, The Who is really, really, really difficult.
When you say difficult, it just sort of is it a sort of a balanced negotiation, or trying to track down all the different people, all the different stakeholders, or what is it that's difficult about it?
Or you kind of got like you've got levels of archive. You've got kind of like the low hanging fruit, which is you're ready to download clips off. I won't mention any particular agencies or libraries, just not to be unfair, but you've got the stuff which you can download. Don't YouTube, don't go there for the time being. We'll come back to that. But I'm not interested in that stuff because it's out there and everyone can see it. So I want to go deeper. I want to go deep. I want to get stuff no one's ever seen, or it's just really hard to get to. I don't really like doing easy stuff. So it's looking at it, and it takes experience. But as I said, sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
What is the what is the sort of the complexities of it, and of the clearing? Is it like,
well, when it comes to the Beatles, so the Beatles are a kind of their kind of holding company is called Apple Corp, which has nothing to do with the computers. And so, you know, when you license footage, it's generally you have a minute minimum. So if you use 1 second or 60 seconds, you'll pay the same amount. Right. With Apple, and they're really premium. It's the Beatles. They're the biggest band ever, right? And you've got Rolling Stones. I've done Rolling Stone documentary on Bill Wyman. You know, The Who. You're talking premium material, and they know that they've got you by the short and curlies when it comes to money. So they don't have minimums; they've got maximums. So you're only allowed to use X amount, and X amount, and X amount, and it costs huge amounts of money. But if you want it, you're going to have to pay for it, and it's all about a negotiation. I love the haggling aspect of it. You know. For all my productions, it's building up the relationships with the libraries as well. So if I have a really massive production like My Generation, I tell him, so look, I've got the budget for this. We'll go big time, because my clients trust me. If I've got a really low budget thing, I'll go, come on, gave you loads of money for the last one. We're on a really low budget here. You're going to have to do me a favor, and they will do. Like, I'm producing my own, in that clip from My Generation, you saw a bit of Mary Quant. Mary Quant was a seminal fashion designer who's kind of accredited with inventing the miniskirt. And I've been, it took me a long time to get that as a proper producer, not archive producer, off the ground. And we're currently making that at the moment with Sadie Frost directing it. And so on that one, I have, you know, I got it off my ground. I've got co-production partners with Goldfinch Studios. But the budget's no way as near as My Generation. So it's my first film as producer. I'm obviously calling in all those favors for being honest with my suppliers before. And hopefully we're going to make it work. It's a great film so far.
I've actually got a question, for sort of a relatively technical question. If you can't clear one part of the rights, what do you do? The person says he's thinking of red flag rights, like Martin Luther King's literary rights, etc. So if you've got one bit that you can't clear, what do you do?
Yeah, okay. So let's take I Have a Dream, MLK, and it's, you know, several cameras were there. So the copyright to the pictures are owned by whoever's cameras were there, be it NBC, CBS, etc. But he has literary rights to do with that. Now, it's, if you editorially in a documentary, do you know what? Nowadays, I think I might just err on the side of just use it. But if you're going to be in a bigger production, yeah, it's one of those red flags. And, you know, if it happened before, then potentially you just not use it. In an advert, for example, I actually cleared that for when I was at the Image Bank, 97, so God, 23, however many years ago. It was for the precursor to OT, so one-to-one. And it was Chris Evans going, I want to have a one-to-one with Martin Luther King. I have a dream. You know, you can imagine the advert. And that cost hundreds of thousands of pounds to the estate. But if you can't clear it, well, you can clear the copyright to the footage, you can't clear the literary rights. You know, people would generally say, just don't use it in the first place. I would actually say to my production, just don't use Martin Luther King, just show GVs of him. Because, you know, people then go, what about image rights? Well, yes, image rights exist in the States. They don't exist in the UK. And for a documentary, you haven't got a problem with showing him, especially in context to what he did. Civil rights leader, legend. The estates will always want, you know, the very nature of estates of dead artists, etc. They're there to make money. So you've got, you know, the Elvis estate make however many tens of millions of pounds a year through licensing his image and his rights and his voice, etc. But for documentaries, I've gone a little bit cavalier in my old age and a bit more gung ho, because for using it in context, fair enough. A great example for that is I did a show for BBC One called Darcy Dances Hollywood. So Darcy Bussell does all the great Hollywood dance movies from the movies, so, you know, Singing in the Rain, Top Hat, etc. So we licensed off MGM. Well, actually, I won't go into the minutiae of that, but we got the license for Top Hat, I think it was, where Fred Astaire, and we're going to use it. And then I woke up one morning and was like, the dancing choreography rights. And so went back, and the estate had not written that into the Fred Astaire. We cleared Fred Astaire, but we hadn't cleared the choreography rights. And we mentioned it, and they went and charged us another couple of grand. But if I hadn't have done that, then they could potentially have gone, you didn't clear the choreography rights. I mean, you can get one clearances when you go to advert. You can get so ridiculously bogged down in it. You have to, you know, wallpaper I've cleared before. And sometimes there's no point. In documentaries especially, just rely on your legal department, because they're the ones who make more money in an hour than I work in a day, make in a day, to make exactly the same decision. So, you know, you have to rely on team members to give you that advice. Yeah, a lot of it was public domain because it was shot by the police force or the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. But you know, we had to license everything else. We had to do a deal with the family. Myself, the line producer, and the director had to go to Colorado a year ago, roughly. And it was a year after the murder, and we had to go to the family. I'm not in a liberty to say how much that cost, but it wasn't cheap. So, and then all the news footage cost money, all the extra clearances. But yes, you're absolutely right in thinking that is actually one of the, on the license front, one of the cheaper films I've made. Yes, a lot of people have made quite a lot of low rent films about the subject matter, and they've just fair used the social media content. But technically, the IP, the intellectual property, belongs to Shanann vis-a-vis belongs to her estate vis-a-vis the parents and Frankie, the brother. So, you know, technically, if there's a fair use and fair dealing, that's a whole different conversation altogether. But we wanted to get a lot of it was never seen, and I nearly went grey trying to get stuff off her computer at their house. And the whole house is a shrine. It was tragic. It was really, really difficult to do the deal with them. But we did them right. And you know, it's a film about the victims, not the murderer. So and they're really happy. I honestly get texts off Shanann's father quite regularly. He's a stand-up dude, and you know they're not a wealthy family, and we did their daughter and their granddaughters and their unborn grandson justice, I think. So. No, not necessarily. It just means you've got to wait a bit longer. You know, never, right. So when you're dealing with archive libraries, the most important thing, I've got a guy who works for me, Matt Price, at Dog and Duck Films. We do stuff together. You know, I market myself as an archive production services company. Now, the first thing I taught him is like, you know, never take the rate card as granted. It's all a negotiation, right? Even the big American Hollywood studios, you're like, well, come on, you're using a bit of that, we're going to do a deal. It's business. It's not a line in the sand. You've got to realize, the companies who make these shows do it to make a profit, and the people who license the material do it to make a profit. So you can do deals, you know, but you have to build up the relationships with these people in order for you to do that. They trust you. So come on, let's enter a deal. I wouldn't necessarily do the deals up front either. I'd do that at the back end. And you know, through the trust you gain with these people over the years. But there is a delay at the moment in getting the material from the archives, because there's a huge backlog. People aren't able to go and get physical tapes a lot of the time, so there's a delay. It doesn't bump the archive up, but it bumps the archive producers rate up though. That's a really good question, actually.
And can you just still charge the fee if you haven't found it?
I would, you know, if it's I've been asked for some crazy stuff over the years. Seriously, I was asked for, can we have footage of George slaying the dragon? I was like, do you want it in colour or black and white? I was being facetious. I've had, can we have Dodie partying? I'll put this partying with Diana on his yacht, and footage of them doing naughty stuff. I'm like, no, it's not going to exist. And you get to, you know, pretty much when you go through your wish list with your director, who go, yeah, that's possible. We'll see if we can find this. For stuff you don't necessarily know. And then, you know, halfway through. But what I always say to my directors, especially directors who used to do an archive, and editors as well, don't forget the editor, because they're just as much as a storyteller, is that you've always got to be flexible when it comes to archive. Even if you might have something in the cut, just because it's on YouTube doesn't mean you can't use it. Doesn't mean you can use it. In fact, just forget about YouTube for the moment.
Yeah, well, you were saying that before. Forget about YouTube. Why is that?
It's a good reference point, and you're okay, director. Come on, like you look on YouTube. You have a look around, a sniff around. You send me some links. But I'm going to go to a source. I'm going to know where that's from and know where that's from. I'm not going to rip it from YouTube, put it in the edit. It's just the most irresponsible thing to do, because you just put pressure on me and put pressure on the whole production. And, you know, just always channel it through. Even if my director wants to go, right, James, I really need this in quite quickly because I need it as guide. So I'll just watermark it. I'll make a record of where it comes from, who posted it originally, the URL, and I'll make a mental record to go, like, you must go and find that where it's from. But sometimes it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. So you always got to tell your directors, always have a backup plan for every shot. And the directors which really embrace that, they've always got that in the back of their head, because unless it comes to physically licensing the footage, and you've got that license agreement, they said yes, there's no guarantee at all that you can use it. So you just got to be flexible. When making archive films, you've got to be completely flexible with what you can use. If there's a core piece of footage, which the whole film is anchored around, then you clear that first. And you do the deal on that first. Because if not, the whole thing falls down. So YouTube is a blessing and a curse. It's, you know, it's going to become, well, it probably is the biggest archive out there in the world, but it's not owned by YouTube. Almost nothing of it is. And so there's no great way of tracing back to people. You can and you can't. I'm doing it at the moment for a documentary CNN. There's certain YouTubers we need to clear. Some of them I can, some of them I can't. It depends whether you can find the emails. If you can find the emails, whether they reply. Some of them want ridiculous money. Some of them go, yeah, go for it. But it's not the way to do it. It's, you know, go to the people who can license you the material in the first place. And most often than not, unless it's like a film about social media, it's more often than not a film about a person or people or something that's happened in life. And you just know where to go and point your direction. Yeah. You're talking US police departments. They're contractually obliged to do their job and give you the material because it's public domain. But you don't get anywhere by being an arsehole, excuse my language. Sorry, shouldn't have mentioned that. My top tip is just be charming. Be put on, I would hate to say the British charm because we're more than, we're worldwide here, but just be charm, be nice, be like you would be towards your in-laws or your grandmother. Be nice, you get what you want. Don't shout and scream. Don't be an idiot. You have to ingratiate yourself with these people. Go on, can you please give me this? I really desperately need it for the end of Play Friday. I realize you're up against it, but it'd be awfully good. This film's going to be great. It's the way you sell something. It's like anything in life. These people are selling or in police departments, they're not necessarily selling it, but they have to give you it. But when it comes to archive libraries, develop those relationships with people. Don't be, I'm making a film, give me the stuff. They'll just put you right to the bottom of the queue and they'll charge you the most they can. And the secret is, a great archive producer, I've got most of my contacts on speed mail, voicemail, speed dial. I'm friends with a lot of them as well. And even if you're not, it's like, if you want something, to get something out of somebody, you don't just ring them up and go, I want this now, give it me. They're just going to tell you to go and do one. You ring them up and be awfully polite, go, terribly sorry, but I'm really needing this. Could you help by any chance? And, it's just being nice to people. Life's like that in general. Just be nice to people, you get what you want. Just working way up of doing it. It is difficult. There are ways to kind of ingratiate into the industry and kind of get, find archive producers, offer yourself for help. In my company, Dog and Duck, I got my number 2, Matt Price, involved. I'm, potentially looking for other people to help. So you have to kind of ingratiate into the industry. And I would say the best way to do it at the moment, because archive producers are really in demand, is find a few archive producers and say, look, can I help? We'll all pay you to do the work, but it's just knowing just certain things up to a certain level and offering to do stuff, not for free, because we'll always pay you. Well, I always will. But it does take a while to get up to archive producer level. But that's not, there's colleagues like Stephen Slater, I know, who fast-tracked himself because he's just the world's most brilliant expert on NASA. Don't get me wrong, he's still done his years, but it was nominated for an Oscar. It's phenomenal work. And so I would say if you wanted to get into the industry, there's a body called Focal International. They're the kind of non-government .org, which represent our industry. And just tap up a few archive producers. Do you need any help? Do you need to, I can help with you. I'm fledgling getting into the industry, and it's completely race, age, non-specific. We don't matter. It doesn't matter so long as you're willing to learn and do it and learn and do it the way we want you to do it. So, there is a sheer lack of archive producers and really good archive researchers in this, well, specifically in this country at the moment. And now archive's gone bananas. We need help, and we need people to train and become people like us. We're not. Never stop making your own little things. I do them all the time. I mean, even just silly little things for my little boy. All these home videos, and to cut them with some really dark, weird, evil stuff from the 70s. How works the trick? But never stop making films. But it's all very well kind of you doing that. But did you license the material for the film, etc., etc.?
Thanks very much, James, for such a thoughtful and insightful session, and for giving us your time, for being so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. And thanks also to everyone who's come along and joined us.